We are at the Mishnah 77b. Avarin be'avarin, limbs with limbs, they get mixed together. Avarin be'avarin balimumin, sorry. If you have regular limbs, they get mixed with blemished limbs. So now, Rabbi Eliezer Omer im karev rosh echad mehen yikru v'kol rosh. If they're all mixed together, so really biblically they should be nullified by the principle called rov, batul barov, nullification by the majority. So, but there was a rabbinically they're going to be prohibited. So it says Rabbi Eliezer, if you brought one of them up, so then you can bring the rest of them up because you can assume the one that was brought was the one that was blemished. Kirayim shalachat man, you can recall it kirayim. So too, if it had the legs of the animals, so if you bring one up, you can bring the rest of them up because we can assume that the one that was brought up, the one that was brought up was the blemished one. Well, it's only rabbinic. So the question is, how far did they put their stringency? How far did they go? So, the rabbis argue. They say no. That even if you have every single limb brought except for one, you still cannot assume that the prohibited one was already brought, and therefore you have to take it all out to the place where they burn the invalid. That one, Jules, like that. Good. You're on the rabbi's team. Usually a good place to be. Depends on the circumstances. So I'm Rabbi Eliezer, lo Hiksha. I'm Rabbi Lazar, lo Hiksha Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Lazar without the yud is later. He's an Amora. Rabbi Eliezer with the yud was Rabbi Kiva's Rabbi. So he's much earlier. So I'm Rabbi Lazar, lo Hiksha Rabbi Eliezer, ela shnayim shnayim. Aval echad echad lo. Very interesting. This whole leniency that Rabbi Eliezer said that if you bring one up, you can assume it was the one that was blemished. Rabbi Lazar explained it's only if you bring two of them at a time. The interesting logic, meaning if you bring two of them at a time, so one of them for sure is good. Only one of them is blemished in the pile. So if you bring two of them, one of the two is for sure good. So he says that then you could assume that the other one is good too. But if you only bring one, aval echad echad lo. That's a little bit more similar to the rabbis. But just bringing one of them, you have to assume maybe the other one, maybe the blemished one is still in the bunch. You can't bring up the rest of them. Like a special leniency, if you have two, then since one of them is allowed, you're able to assume that the other one's allowed too. Yeah, fine. Must Rabbi Yomi on this idea that Rabbi Eliezer said this. So it says here, there's a brisa that Rabbi Yomi says that even if all of them were brought except for one, you have to bring that one out to the Beis HaSreifa. Sounds like that's meaning that's all according to so once again the brisa tells us part of the brisa. The Chachamim say even if all of them were brought except for one, that one you have to still bring it to get burned. Sounds like, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're able to bring all of them. As long as one of them was brought, you can bring all of them. So, Amar Lo, which is a problem. We just said it has to be brought two at a time, only two at a time, but not if it's brought one at a time, then not. Meaning, say it better. The Brisa says, if all of them are brought except for one, the Chachamim say you have to burn that one. Sounds like Rabbi Eliezer says you could bring that one. He doesn't allow you to bring only two at a time, not one at a time. I'll explain it to you. When it said one, it means one pair. It doesn't mean one, it means one pair, which is two. That's what it means. If you have two left over, one pair, you have two left over, then the Chachamim say you got to burn it. And Rabbi Eliezer says that you are allowed to bring it up. Yeah. Okay.
It really implies that the group is an even number.
This really implies that the group is an even number.
Otherwise, you end up with one somewhere.
Well, yes and no. Yes. That's true. So we're just saying like the case happened to be you have one left. We don't know what happened beforehand. No. Maybe the guy mistakenly brought it one by one. I don't know. The question is right now on this remaining pair, what do you do? That was what happened beforehand, I don't know. So okay. Says the Mishnah, Dam is Arab b'mayim and Yesh b'mayim dam kosher. So now, mixtures, liquidy mixtures. You have blood that is going to be, we'll see different reasons why you have, either because you to apply onto the altar. So you have blood that's going to be applied onto the altar. Dam shenis arid b'mayim. So you have blood and water mixed together. So now, you can only throw blood onto the altar, right? So as long as it's blood, it can go onto the altar. But it got mixed with water. So at what point do we say it's water? At what point do we say it's blood? Dam shenis arid b'mayim im yesh bo maris dam. We're going to see this. It's interesting. By the liquid, it goes after the appearance. So as long as it has, you're right. If your wine, if the blood is usually blood is a darker,
Blue blood.
yeah. So at what point do you say it's not really the blood color? That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly, but in Yeshbo Maris Dam, if it still looks like blood, even though it has water, it's still going to be kosher. It's still going to be permitted. Okay, meaning because it's still blood, and therefore it's blood, you can apply it onto the altar. If it's nis'arif b'yayin, so now what do? For all intents and purposes, blood and wine is really going to be the same species because they're both red. So now, if it mixed with wine, so now what do? You can't tell if it's still bloody or not. But how do you know which is the majority? Is it wine or is it blood? How do you know? So we're going to apply this principle of Rowan, and it's one of those like definitely needs more in depth. Yeah,
but blood with water doesn't imply. I mean, yes, implies that that's a majority, but it doesn't mean it's a majority in terms of 50%. That's one.
It could even be 3%, 3% blood, 97% water. But if it still remains the look, you bring it up. Saying liquids is different. For the liquid, by mikvah comes up, it goes after how it looks, its appearance. Even though percentage-wise, it's definitely gonna have not so much. So now let's say it's mixed with wine. So now what do? So roan oso ki'ilu humayim. So simply understood is you look at the wine like it's water. What would be if it were water? Would this still have an appearance of blood, or would it be diluted to water? So you find out the measurement of how much wine went in, and then you have to see if that was water, what would be. So now rono so kilu humayim, and fine. So that's that. And therefore, if it would still remain red, so then it's going to be blood. You can bring it up, throw it onto the altar, and if not, then not. Fine. Third case, in this ari b'dam behemo b'dam achaya, it gets mixed up with an animal that's not sacrificial, the blood of a non-sacrificial domesticated animal or a wild animal. So what do? Same thing. Rowan oso kilu humayim. You look at it as if it's water. Simply understood. We're going to go back and forth, but simply understood is that you look at the non-sacrificial part, the wine, the other blood, if that's water, and then you'll see if our blood, the sacrificial blood, would remain in its color, then you could throw it up. You could apply it onto the altar. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda, this is a famous opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, famous probably because Rashi actually goes like this when it comes to meat and milk questions, but we don't go like Rashi. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein dam mevatel dam. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that when you have two things of the same species, it's called min bimino, two things of the same species. Min means species. Bimino means in its species. Versus min b'she'eno mino, a species that mixed together with something else. He says when you have two of the same things mixed together, they don't nullify each other. We don't apply majority. We don't apply those rules. They don't nullify each other. Min b'mino one does not nullify the other. You can have as much water as you want. You can have. There's no majority. He has a verse that proves it. But that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. That min b'mino is not ein dam mevatel dam. Therefore, I don't care how much wine there is, how much blood there is. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's still the sacrificial blood will not become nullified, and therefore you could apply it. Yeah.
Unless you actually know the measurement of stuff.
True. Yeah, true. I mean, he's going to have a verse. He's going to have a verse where the Torah has two bloods mixed together and still refer to each one of them by its own name. That's going to be his proof that two things of the same kind mixed together don't get nullified. Yeah. So, okay. Nisarev bedam psulin. Let's say you have sacrificial blood mixed together with the blood of an animal that cannot be brought up, such as a sodomized animal. So, what do? Oh, so here we say yishpach la'ama. So even if you have more kosher blood, you have 80% kosher blood and 20% of sodomized blood, it doesn't matter. Because we said those animals, right? Those animals never get offered up. That was our Mishnah. If those animals are mixed in the bunch, everyone has to die. They have to get a wound. So if you know that a blood of an animal, which is forbidden for benefit, gets mixed together with kosher blood, so then you have to spill it out into the channel where the blood gets spilled out. Damatamtis is right. There's the blood that initially comes out when you kill the animal, the life blood. Then there's like the leftover blood that spills out, not the initial life blood. If it gets mixed with that blood, same thing. You shafek la'ama. You got to spill it out into the special channel where that blood goes. Rabbi Eliezer machshev, and the Gemara is going to explain why. Rabbi Eliezer allows you to bring up this blood. Imlo nimlach the nasan kasher. Now, this is all. What could you do ideally? The Tanakh, the first opinion says you cannot bring it up. Rabbi Eliezer allows you to bring it up. If you went and you brought this blood up, even the first opinion says it's valid. In low nimlach, if you didn't consult, if you didn't ask, hey, come and go, what can I do or something, and you just did it anyways, then it's going to be valid, because they're only the dispute's going to be about a rabbinical decree, but that's only can I do it. But post facto, if you did it, it's going to be good. Yeah, don't ask. Do ask. Yeah. So Amar Rav Chia bar Chan bar Abba Amar Rav Yochanan. Okay, so now just back for the first case of the Mishnah, blood mixed with water. This is interesting. It's going to come up again at some point. Yeah, in a daf for now. So lo shna elo shenaflu mayim l'soich dam, aval nafal dam l'soich mayim rishon batal. So the case of the wine mixed with the water. So it says Rav Chia bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. It's only true if the water falls into the blood. If water falls into the blood, then you have to now figure out, okay, how much water is here? I mean, not figure out. You have to look at it and say, okay, does it look like wine? Does it look like blood still? If it looks like blood, you can bring it up. If it's been diluted too much, you can't. But what if it goes the other way? You put the blood into the water. So now he says, Rishon batal. Every drop of wine, of blood, is nullified in the group of water, in the bit of water. And therefore, even if you're going to end up having more blood than water, it doesn't matter, because each drop of blood that falls into a majority of water becomes nullified, and that's it. It's considered water now. So the second drop, the third drop, even if the sum total is going to be more blood than water, but since every drop that falls in gets nullified, now if you're thinking about it, they're going to talk about what if you just poured in one big pour, then you don't have the drop. Yeah, true. But in the case where you're pouring it drop after drop, so then that's going to become nullified. Fine. Amar of Papa ula inyan kisui ein okay lefish ein dichli b'mitzvahs. There's a special mitzvah that when you slaughter certain animals, you have to cover up the blood. I think a chayin oath. You have to cover up the blood. Special mitzvah called kisui hadam. So what happens if you have a little bit of the blood? You just slaughtered an animal. You have a mitzvah to cover up the blood. But now that blood is dropping into water. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop. So there we say it's different. There we say it does not get nullified, because mitzvahs don't have this rule of nullification. Rashi explains that by sacrificial offerings, we have this principle called pushed away. Where we had an animal has a blemish, it can't be brought, even if it gets better afterwards. Sometimes you can't bring it. If the meat gets invalidated, and then the invalidation goes away, right? You take it out of the temple and then you bring it back in. So there you have a concept called dichui. It gets pushed away. In the world of sacrificial offerings, sometimes things that are pushed away forever. But when Rav Papa says when it comes to mitzvahs, it's not that way. So what does happen? Another principle which also comes up is that each drop goes in. Practically, you're right, it does get nullified in the majority. But what happens? Once enough drops fall in that now the majority is blood. So it's called chozer v'ner. It goes and it wakes up the rest of the blood. That's the meaning. It goes, technically it is nullified. If you have one little drop of blood, you're right. In the majority of water, it's water. But at some point, as you increase in the drops, and now it hits a level where it's to be considered blood, so then they all join together. Well, chozer, they go back and they so to speak wake up, and therefore now you have blood, and therefore you have to do the mitzvah of covering it over. Okay, fine. Now, interesting case. It's also complicated. You have 4 prohibited items. You have something which is pigel. Yeah, you went to the wrong restaurant. Yeah, they served you pigel. Then they served you no sar, the food that was meat that was left over. Then the waiter comes out for a third time and gives you impure food, the hatame. So you have these 3 foods. Now, basically, I'm not clear if it matters if it's 3 or 2 of them. For our purposes, it shouldn't matter. If you take 2 out of these 3 things, and we know that the only violation biblically and you're punished by is going to be if you have a kazayas, an olive oil. So basically, you're going to put this in your mouth, these 2 pieces. Now, what's going to happen? As you're chewing it, some of the tame piece is going to go into the pigel piece. Some of the pigel piece is going to go into the tame piece. So if you start out with a kazayas of pigel, it could be now you have 1.5 kazayas in that piece of pigel, only half a kazayas of tame, because they all got mixed together in your mouth. So now, if you go and you eat this, you're patur from punishment. You're patur from getting lashes, even if they warn you. Even if they warn you, if you eat this and you swallow, we're going to give you lashes. You take 2 pieces, you chew them, you swallow them, you don't get lashes. Now, it could be, depending, there's 2 opinions, if whenever you have half an olive's worth of prohibition, is that prohibited? Right? You only get punished for an olive's worth, about half an olive's worth. That's 2 opinions. Is that biblical? It's called chatzi shir. Is that biblical or not? So did you violate a violation? That depends on other factors. But for our purposes, we want to know, do you get lashes or not? That the Gemara says, Rish Lakish says, no lashes. Why? It's impossible that one of the species of one of the types of food didn't consume some of the other species, and then it was mevatel, it was nullified. It nullified it. If you have one kazayas of tameh in your mouth, and now a little bit of the pigel goes into that piece, and now you have 1 kazayas of tameh. A little bit of the, let's say, 0.2 of the pigel went into the piece of tameh. So now you have 1 kazayas versus 0.2. It nullifies it, and then you only have 0.8 of the tameh piece, which is not a kazayas. So we're going to learn 3 things from here. Shma mina tla. Shma mina 3 things. First of all, Shma mina isurin mevatan zeh. The concept of nullification applies to prohibited items as well. It's not just if it's prohibited and permitted, but it's also if you have 2 prohibited items. Now, why is it such a novelty? It bothered me. Why would you think not this way? I think in a daf or 2 for now, they're going to bring the other opinion. That's going to disagree with this. But that's one thing, that prohibitions can nullify each other. Right? You have a piece of you have meat that's prohibited, and then you have milk that's prohibited. Whatever the case is, fats that are prohibited, can they nullify each other? So that's one. Shma no saying tan barov lav daraisa. So right now the Gemara assumes, now this is not true in halacha, but at this one we assume giving taste over into something else is not biblical. How do you treat taste in halacha? When the Torah says you cannot eat something, what did it mean? It means you cannot eat the substance. But what if taste of that substance goes into something else? How do you look at taste? Whatever taste is, I don't know. Is it a chemical thing? So that's called tam ki'ikr. When you have taste transfer, right? Meat and milk through cooking, right? Your piece of cheese falls into the cholent while it's cooking. So you quickly take the piece of cheese out. Okay, but some of the taste of the cheese went into the cholent. So how do you look at taste? Is taste an entity? Is it not an entity? That's a big debate.
I mean, that was the question. What about artificial flavor?
Good. That would be true. Right. I guess I'm limiting right now to the taste of a official flavor. No. A real flavor, yeah. So says the word right now, at this point you see it can't be biblical. Why? Because what do you have in your mouth? You have 2 pieces, and one went into another piece. And it we're saying that therefore you could not. So let's give an example. You have a piece of pickle in your mouth, which is one kazayis. And we're saying you have a piece of tame in your mouth, another piece of meat, which is tame, or whatever, a piece of impure. So now, the piece of impurity, let's say 0.2 of it went into the piece of pickle. So you have 1.2 total, but you only have 0.8 of your tame piece. If taste transferring is biblical, so what's the problem? It shouldn't be nullified. You tasted some of in your pickle piece, you also tasted some of your tame piece. It gives over its flavor. So, at the end of the day, you still had an entire kazayas of tame. You had from the actual piece itself, and you have from the flavor that went into the pickle piece. So you see the fact that whenever it goes into something else, we don't look at that little bit that went in. You see that flavor is not biblical. Transfer flavor is not biblical. And one more, v'shamina hasra savik lo shmei hasra. Right? Yeah, there's a lot of makos that you have to warn to get punished. That we know. In this case, you can't give a definite warning because you don't know for sure what he's going to swallow. Is it pickle? Is it nosar? Is it tame? Is it pickle? Is it? You don't know what it is. You don't know which one absorbed the other one. So the warning you're going to give is at best a warning of death. What are you going to say? A warning for tame? Maybe. A warning for pickle? Maybe. That's two opinions. If such a warning is sufficient to render lashes. So you see from here, from the fact that Reish Lakish says you're potter, you're exempt, even if you got warned, it must be that the warning is a warning of doubt. It's because it's a warning of doubt, because you don't know exactly what you're going to swallow. And you see that is going to be not considered a valid warning to get lashes. Okay. Looks late. Masiv Rava. So, okay, now this case is brought also as proofs back and forth. Very interesting. Exactly. The details is like 5 different opinions in the Rishonim, but also Isa Minachitim. You have a dough, right? So of wheat. Umin orez, and of rice. So now you have your dough, and you know that you have to take up challah. There's a obligation to remove challah, to remove a piece of the dough and set it aside for the coat. So now, if you have, let's say, rice dough, im yesh batam dagan, hayavis b'challah, yafal gav druba orez. You have a majority of your dough is rice, and you have flavoring of one of the 5 grains. So says Amar, you're liable in taking off challah. You don't have any of the 5 grains in the dough. You have the taste of the 5 grains in the dough. The taste was transferred, and yet you're liable in challah. What do you see? Clearly, taste transferring is biblical, and it obligates you in removing a piece of the dough. So it says the Gemara, no, midirabanan. You can get out of it. Maybe the taste transfers here. The obligation to remove challah is only of rabbinic nature, and therefore it's not a problem. And here's at first glance, this case seems wild. If that's true, look at that next part of the Mishnah. Ema Seifa. Adam Yotze Pahidei Chabas the Pesach. Right, you have I guess you're Sephardi. Yeah, you have your rice dough, your rice matzah, and and the only way to fulfill your obligation of matzah is it has to be made from the 5 grains, just not too much till 11. That's chametz, but that's where it comes from. The Rashi brings. It's only things that could be chametz could be yotze with matzah. So you have now grain, flavoring of grain that went into your matzah. So at first glance, the simple understanding is it doesn't have any grain in it, has a flavoring of grain, and you fulfill your biblical obligation with matzah with that. So what do you see? If you fulfill your obligation with matzah, then for sure the transfer of taste is biblical. So, says the Gemara, you're right. Ella like this. Min b'she'eno mino b'taima. Min b'mino b'ruba. Things of different species of min b'she'eno mino. So, min is a species. B'she'eno mino means if it's mixed with a different species. So then that goes after the taste. If the tastes are recognizable, so then you will be liable lashes and things like that. So, yeah. So Rashi explains that which said with Reish Lakish of the pigel and the nose and the tame, there the taste was not discernible. But in the event that you can discern the taste, then of course you get lashes biblically because transference of taste is biblical. Now the part that's going to cause a lot of back and forth. Min bimino, if you have two things of the same species, then you just go after the majority. It's just nullified in the majority, and that's it. Min bimino, two things of the same species will be nullified by the majority. Okay. It says the Gemara, hold on. Of Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, good. We're gonna attack Rabbi Yehuda. So once again, if you have two different things, two different species, it goes after the taste. Now we know to nullify taste, you need 60. I've understood, right? There's no majority there. You need shishin. So min b'she'en amino is b'taima. You have to basically take away the taste. So if you're dealing with taste and the taste is discernible, the fact that you have a majority of the other thing is irrelevant because the taste is still here. You got to get rid of the taste. But usually we say 60 times we'll get rid of the taste. By very spicy things, we say not. It's going to be more. And if someone tastes it and the taste is still there, it's prohibited. So we don't go after the majority there. When it comes to two things of the same species, there the taste is not discernible. Two things are mixed together. You have a kosher milk and non-kosher milk. Go figure out the taste. Well, it's the same taste, right? So what are you gonna do now? So there we say you go after the majority. That's what it does. Okay. Says the Gemara now. I don't understand. V'nishaer min b'mino, kemin b'she'en amino. Why don't you treat things of the same species the same way you treat things of different species, and therefore you're going to be more stringent. You're going to be more stringent. Rashi understands. I don't know if this is accepted according to everybody, but Rashi understands. It sounds like it's some kind of like a rabbinic nature. We should make a rabbinical decree. Rashi says, "Why are you being, when it comes to biblical obligations of two of the same species, why are you so fast to say it's nullified in the majority? Let us treat it as if it was two different species and require much more, right? You'll require 60 times. If you have two things, you have milk. So now you have a non-kosher milk and kosher milk mixed together. So we're asking, why do you after the majority? You know that it's 80% non-kosher milk or 80% kosher milk. Says the Gemara, according to Rashi, why are you so fast to just nullify biblical obligations? You should make it stringent, require the amount you would need to take away the taste. So v'nishayer min b'mino kemin b'she'eno mino. The same way you do by a min b'she'eno mino. Now, where's a good example of this? Vitnan nisarev b'yayin. Blood and wine got mixed together. Our Mishnah. Ro'en oso ki'ilu humayim. Simply understood. Ma'ilav ro'en oso liyayin ki'ilu humayim. So what we have blood, which you want to place onto the altar, mixed with wine. For our purposes, that's considered the same species. One's blood and one is wine, but they have the same appearance. So in the world of nullification, they're going to be the same species. Now, what do you have? You have two of these, same species. And yet, what do? You look at the wine to see if it was water, what would be? So, now what should you do instead? Says the Gemara, well, 1 second. If you go after nullification, so then as long as you can right, I guess what you should do is really find out what's the majority. I guess we're assuming that you know the majority. If you don't know the majority, it's a whole different question. But you know the majority is either wine or blood. So just go after the majority. Yeah, we don't do that. You view the wine like it was a different species, like it was water, and then you determine what's going to be. So don't you see that even by things of the same species, in our case, blood and wine, you don't just say, go after the majority. You look at the wine like it was water and then figure it out. Here it's a little confusing. Says we're going to get out of it. No. Rowan oso lidam. No. You look at the blood. You look at the blood as if it's water, meaning to tell you that if there is less blood than there is wine, it's just going to be nullified. It's like another way of saying that the blood is nullified. If you have wine and water, so obviously it's going to be red, you'll treat it as wine. So in this case, if you know that the majority is wine and the minority is blood, you'll treat the blood like water, and therefore it will be nullified. So why did it say it in such a funny way? So ihachi, the Gemara says, just say batal mibayile. If you know that the blood is the minority, sounds like that's the novelty of our Mishnah. When the blood is the minority, you could still put it up onto the altar. But if you know it's the minority, why do you say? And the point of the Mishnah is that you view the blood like it's water and nullified. So just speak straight. If you want to tell me that we go after the majority, just say the blood is nullified. Why have to go so fancy? You view the blood like it's water. What was the point of that? The Ode, that's one problem. The Ode Tanya, another brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rowan Oso, Ki'iluhu Yain Adom, Imdiha Mareu Kasher, the Imlav Pasal. We have Rabbi Yehuda himself, who says, I guess we're going to bring the whole Mishnah later, who says, I think this is talking about, no? I believe it's talking about a mikvah. Okay, we have to see. It's coming up later. I think it's by a mikvah, not by blood. Yeah. Either way, we have a brisa of Rabbi Yehuda himself saying that you look at it. You look at it like it's red wine. That I think it's around the next page. Yeah, we're gonna have a case where you have things that are impure and of milk of where is it? Okay, it's coming up soon at some point. Yeah, okay. But the point is that you have Rabbi Yehuda himself saying that it's coming up right now. Next line. So we have Rabbi Yehuda himself saying that you look at you're gonna look at the mixture like there's red wine, and now you're gonna see did it last or did it dilute it? So Rabbi Yehuda himself agrees to this. So now okay, so that's another place where you see that we use this principle called Rowan, where you have two things of the same species, and yet we're going to view it as it's two things of different species. And we don't just say you go after the majority. You look at it, what would happen if it be a different species? What would be in that case? First, the language in the Mishnah is not good. And second of all, you have Rabbi Yehuda himself saying that. So on that, we say, you know what, you're right. There's actually two opinions. Do you say this idea of when two things are the same species, do you look at it like different species, yes or no? Oh, chalav, you have a basket that has yain lavan, or milk, white wine or milk, and therefore you cannot tell in the water. It's too similar to the color of water. And you're going to now, you're going to put it into the mikvah. V'hitbilu. Holchin acharo. The first opinion says you go after the majority. You go after the majority. You want to purify your vessel, and there's going to purify the inside of your vessel, and you want to know, was it purified? So as long as the water is the majority, so then you're good to go. If water is not the majority, then you're not good to go. So yeah, so you have your barrel full of whatever you have, either the white wine or the milk, and and now you're toiveling it. So now, if the majority is water, you're good to go. Everything else is nullified to the water, and the water went to the vessel, and it is purified. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rowan also kilu yain adom. Rabbi Yehuda himself said, we treat it as if it's red wine, and then you'll see how much water went in. Im dihamareyu kasher. If enough water went in, that if it was red wine, it would dilute it, it would weaken it a lot. So then that's going to be kosher. The inlav pasal. But if not, then it's going to be nullified. So what do we see? The first opinion says you don't do this viewing method, Rowan, to after the majority. Rabbi Yehuda says that you do the viewing method. On that we say, V'ramini. Now we have a problem. Dli shehu malei rokin v'hidbilu kilo tavel. So this case is not really relevant to us, but if you have a bucket full of spit is considered spittle, considered much thicker, and therefore the water is not going to really get through. So then it's going to be it's not going to be considered a good immersion. So at least shumali rokan v'hidbilu kilo tavel. This part's going to be a little complicated, meaning how you plug it in. Meiraglayim, if the bucket is full of urine, roan osan kilu hein mayim. You're going to view it like it's water, meaning Rashi explained, even though the urine is a little bit different than the rest of the water, but still it's considered one species with the water, and therefore you don't need a majority, and it's going to be nullified. Now, the part that we need is male mechatas, a bucket filled with mechatas, special purification waters that you use for someone who came in contact with a dead person. Rashi explained that this is very chashuv. It's very important. It has a certain level of sanctity, and therefore it's not going to be nullified right away. Meaning, generally, when you put something into a mikvah, so like the case of the urine, if it's considered like water, as long as water touches it, it's called hashaka. Literally means to kiss it. But when you put something into the water, if water touches it, so it's attached to water, it purifies it. But if you're something of importance, like the mechatas, so then that's not going to work. The regular form of hashaka, just touching it with living water, with water in the mikvah, is not enough. Rather, you need a majority. So, mechatas achi yirbu amayim. Mali mechatas achi yirbu hamayim al mechatas. If it's full of this special purification for someone who came in contact with a dead person, you need to have a majority. So what we want is that the Brisa says that you go after the majority. So now, man sham islay the islay rowan, Rabbi Yehuda. Who's the one of the opinion that says rowan? You view things of the same species like a different species. That's Rabbi Yehuda. And yet this Brisa says that it's enough to have a majority of water with the mechatas water. So yeah, and we don't say rowan. So this does not. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't just view them as you shouldn't view it as a majority of water that's going to come and nullify the mechatas. Rather, you should view it as the way you view it. View it as if it was a different species, and then see is it enough to dilute it or not? And yet we don't say that. So Amar Abai, on that we say lo kasha. That's not a difficulty. Hadidei hadirabbe. It depends. Is it Rabbi Yehuda himself or it's his Rebbe? One of them is going to be you go after the majority, and one of them is going to be you're going to invoke the method of Rowan. I guess we'll start from this case again tomorrow.